to God's word. Father, as we come now to look into your word, we confess that your word is living and active. Your word brought this world into existence. You spoke, and it came to be. And Lord, we acknowledge that we don't live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from your mouth. We need your word. Your word is power. Your word is truth. Your word is freedom. Your word is grace. Your word is glory. It's the glorious revelation of who you are, and you manifest yourself through your word. Please send your Spirit to minister to each one of us through your word, we pray. Father, we need not just to understand, but to be transformed. We don't just need to know certain truths, Father, we need to believe them in the core of our being. And so please, won't you help us to believe, to see, soften hardened hearts and open blind eyes, and renew dead emotions, and ignite afresh our will and our desire to serve you and to live for you wholeheartedly. In Christ's name and for his glory we pray. Amen. All right, so we've been working our way through the book of Ecclesiastes. You can open up your Bibles to Ecclesiastes. You're going to need a Bible. So if you don't have one with you, just lean over to the person next to you and make sure you can see their Bible. Because we really want to be able to see what God says, not what I say. We want to know and believe what God says, not just what the guy standing up in the front of the church says. We've been working through this book of Ecclesiastes. Socrates is purported to have said at his trial, the unexamined life is not worth living. And by that he was meaning that we have a responsibility as people to examine, to think about, to ponder, to consider our lives and what they mean and what their purpose is, what the point of life is. And that's exactly why God inspired the book of Ecclesiastes. God has given us a revelation to help us consider what our life is all about and to help us live well. It's part of wisdom literature. So as I mentioned often, we get the most out of this book when we contemplate, when we meditate, when we think about, when we mull about it. Its truths aren't unlocked quickly and easily. We need to consider how these things apply to our life and see our lives transformed as we think about these things. Now, one of the ways that we understand the book of Ecclesiastes is by understanding the argument that the inspired preacher is making. He leads to the conclusion at the end of the book. What is life all about? Fear God and keep his commandments. But he leads us to that conclusion and helps us understand what that means in 4 distinct sections. There's 4 distinct sections in the book of Ecclesiastes. Chapters 1 and 2 considers or asserts that life without God is empty. And that's one of the key terms, vanity, vanity. It's meaningless, it's empty, it's void. The second section from chapter 3 to 5, life with God, is an enigma. And he uses the same word, vanity, vanity, but in the sense of we can't understand its meaning. It's meaningless. We can't grasp fully. With God and under God and because of God, everything in life has meaning and purpose. Everything is arranged according to God's purpose. But we as limited human beings can't grasp the meaning and purpose in everything and in all the details of life. Which leads us to chapter 6 to 8, the third section of the argument. Life is full of contradictions. And there he looks at some of the realities we face, the things we can see, the things we do experience that make us struggle with the thesis or the truth that an all-good God is providentially controlling everything in life according to his purpose and plan. And so he looks at different areas of life and helps us to see them from a different perspectives. Things aren't always as they appear. There's more to what's going on than what meets the eye at first, which leads into the last section of the book, chapters 9 to 12, live with practical wisdom. And you can hear, even as I've summarized that, it gets a lot practical, and there's a lot more commands and imperatives in that section. How then shall we live in the light of what we've learned through the book of Ecclesiastes? So before we've reached the end of section 3, and before we launch into section 4, I want to go back and just look at what we've covered in a different light. Because as we look at the book of Ecclesiastes, one way to understand what he's saying is to see how each part forms part of this argument and fits in as part of the argument that he's making and presenting. But as he makes this argument, he doesn't do it in a linear fashion. He doesn't say point A, point B, point C, conclusion. What he does is says point A, point B, point C. Let's go back and consider point A again. Let's just think about point A a little bit more. Let's go back and consider point B a bit more. Let me give you another perspective of point A again. Now let's have a look at point C, and then the conclusion. So another way to properly understand the book of Ecclesiastes is to trace these central themes, these main ideas that are tracked right through the book of Ecclesiastes, and follow the development of the argument around each of these themes. There's a number of them, and that's what I want to do this morning. Really, by the end of the book, we want to see what it means to fear God and keep His commandments. But what does it mean? What does it look like? How does it work to fear God and keep His commandments in relation to death and eternity? Or what does it mean to fear God and keep His commandments in the light of injustice and oppression? Or what does it look like to fear God and keep His commandments in relation to wisdom and folly? So I want to look at some of these themes and how the author develops in his understanding and presentation of these truths, and then which leads us on to the conclusion in a different way, along a different pathway. So here are these different truths. Wisdom and folly is the first one. These different themes that we want to track through, and really open up your Bibles and track with me what he says about wisdom and folly in each of these sections of Ecclesiastes. So go to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 12. Ecclesiastes 1, verse 12. I, the preacher, the inspired preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I've seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after the wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I've acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. And I perceived that this also is but a striving after the wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So he's explaining here his credentials for this inspired doctrinal dissertation, that he has spent so much time and money and effort in trying to discern what is life all about, how to live wisely or how to live well. And he's diligently tried to unlock the secrets of life, but he comes to recognize can't be done. There's a kind of wisdom that falls short of the fear of God that he has in mind by the end of the book. It's a kind of wisdom that is looking for all the answers. And that kind of wisdom is not going to deliver. Notice how he concludes there in verse 18 of chapter 1. In much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. This is not the kind of wisdom he's wanting us to pursue. Notice how he goes on to develop this in chapter 2 and verse 13. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Yes, there's more value in wisdom. Folly, that's bad. You don't want to go down that pathway. Wisdom is beneficial. Wisdom is good. But wisdom doesn't eliminate death. Wisdom by itself doesn't give life meaning and purpose. Wisdom can't unlock the meaning of life in and of itself. And so the fear of God must temper our wisdom. Look at what he says in chapter 5 and verse 1. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools. For they do not know that they are doing evil. Be not rash in your mouth, nor let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few. And the perspective here is wisdom acknowledges, wisdom that leads to the fear of God, true wisdom, acknowledges that God is in heaven and we are not. God is all powerful and we are not. God is all knowing and we are not. And so God is not accountable to us to give us all the answers we want. We've got to live life under God and under God's wisdom. We've got to accept and embrace the wisdom that God reveals, the truth that God reveals, the light that God provides, and accept when God is silent. And accept where God doesn't give truth and revelation, where God doesn't give explanation. This is the fear of God. We are living under God. We know our place in life. Look at chapter 6 and verse 10. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what man is, and that he is not able to dispute with one stronger than he. And what's he getting at? God knows everything. God knows the past, the present, the future. There's nothing new to God. And man is not able to dispute with one stronger than him. We can't dispute with God. The more the words, verse 11, the more vanity. And what is the advantage to man? For who knows what is good for man while he lives the few days of his vain life which he passes like a shadow? Who can tell man what will be after him under the sun? We don't know what is good. We don't always know what is right. We don't know what will be significant in the long run. There's so much we don't know. And we can't argue and get that out of God or of anyone else. We can't force it out of him. Therefore, we need to live with this kind of submission to God, to what God has revealed and to what God has planned and purposed. Only God knows everything. Only God can see how everything works together for good, in his way, in his timing, in his plan. Wisdom respects the limits of what we can know and understand. Secondly, wisdom recognizes what cannot be changed. Wisdom recognizes what cannot be changed. If you just go back to that scripture I read in chapter 1 and verse 15, this is how he starts off. What is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be counted. Brian and I paraphrase this often saying, it is what it is. It is what it is, right? That's submission. That's submission to life. It is what it is. We can't change it. And that's sometimes helpful. But the inspired preacher goes beyond it is what it is. He starts there. He starts realizing there's some things in life we just can't change. But he moves on from there. Look at chapter 3 and verse 14. I perceived that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done it so that people fear before him. Now he's making this just after this whole section. You'll notice there in chapter 3, there's a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to pluck up. He's saying there's a time for everything, even opposite things and everything in between. Everything is under God's plan and purpose. And he perceives, he recognizes whatever God has done endures, whatever God has planned endures. Whatever God decides stands. Nothing can be added to it, nothing taken from it. Nobody can improve on God's plan and purpose. We can't add something that makes it better. We can't take away something that makes it better. Do you believe that? Do you believe that everything in life is the way it is? Perfect. I know my brother was playing this game once. He liked to play these funny kinds of question games. And he posed this question: if you had all the money in the world and all the influence, you knew the most powerful people in the world, what would you change about this world? Think about that for a moment. If you had infinite power, infinite influence, infinite finances and resources, what would you change about this world? What pops to your mind? Hundreds of things, right? You might change your salary check. You might change your physique. You might change your marriage. You won't tell that to anyone. You might change this country. You might change the government, its rulers. You might change some part of history. You might change your abilities, your credentials. Do you realize that God has infinite power, infinite influence, infinite wealth and resources, and there's nothing that He would change in His plan and purpose? Everything is exactly as He's planned and purposed it to be. Do you see how different our perspective is from God? Honestly, in our heart of hearts, we believe we could run the universe a little bit better. If I had that much power and that much knowledge and that much influence, I'm sure I could do a better job than God. Which is why so much of the time we live our lives trying to change what cannot be changed. Change what shouldn't be changed. Notice chapter 7 as he develops this further. Verse 10. Say not, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Don't look back and say, the history was better. When I was young, it was better. No, now is as good as the past. Not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. So there's great value in wisdom, right? But consider verse 13, the work of God. Who can make straight what He has made crooked? Notice how He's changed the wording here. It's not just there are things that are crooked that can't be made straight. He's come to realize God has a plan and purpose for everything. Therefore, everything in this universe is happening according to His plan. And consider the work of God. This is the work of God that we're looking at. And what God has made crooked cannot be made straight. And what God has made straight cannot be made crooked. When we wrestle against the realities of life that cannot be changed, we are calling into question God's wisdom and God's power and God's providential plan. There's a God-appointed time and place for everything. Look at his conclusion by chapter 8, verse 16. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the busyness that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes sleep, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. Do you live this way? This is the fear of God. This is the kind of wisdom that the inspired preachers kind of lead us to have. It's a kind of wisdom that says, God is in heaven and I am not. God knows and I do not. God has a plan even though I may not. God understands even though I do not. And that is enough for me. I live by faith, not by sight. I live by faith in who God is, not by experience, not by feelings, not by emotions. I trust God. There's no other way to live well. There's no other way to live well than by faith. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Because anyone who comes to Him must believe that He exists, and He is the rewarder, the blesser, the encourager, the empowerer, the one who makes fruitful those who seek Him, those who live for Him, those who love Him. Fearing God is having the wisdom to accept what we cannot understand and what we cannot change about this life. This is why he has that middle section in Ecclesiastes 5. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Draw near to listen, to learn, to submit, to worship. That's the first theme, wisdom and folly. Second theme running through, death and the brevity of life. Death and the brevity of life. Death is certain and life is brief. Now, how do we live in the light of that reality? How do we live well? Well, again, go back to chapter 1, Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 3. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. And he starts off with this picture of, life, the cycles of life keep going on, and we just have a brief little fleeting moment in it all, and then we also gone. And what is it all amounting up to? What is it all adding up to? Look at chapter 2, verse 16. For of the wise as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten, how the wise dies just like the fool. And that's why he said, I hated life because of what's done under the sun. When he thought about it, he thought, listen, you get fools who live really badly, and you get people who live really well, and after death, what does it all mean? What does it mean 100 years after we die? What does it mean 1,000 years from now? Who even remembers? So the significance of life, he's introducing us into this theme that we can't think about life as merely these 30 years, 50 years, 70 years. There's more to life than that. Because if that's all you consider, then there's no big difference between the wise man and the fool. We can't make any sense out of life when we don't consider death and the reality thereafter. So look at chapter 3 and verse 11. He, that is God, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, He has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from beginning to end. We live with the sense of eternity. People all over the world live with that realization deep down that there's more to life than just the busyness here. There's something else. That's why the world is full of religion. It's full of people trying to provide answers for what is the meaning and significance of life. What happens after we die? How does that make sense in the light of eternity? The one thing that no one can really accept is that this life is all there is. Not deep down. And yet we cannot understand it fully. We cannot, in our own wisdom and in our own strength, know what it's all about and what God is doing from beginning to end. But notice what he says in verse 17, later on there in chapter 3. Verse 16 we'll read, Moreover, I saw that under the sun, in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. And I said in my heart, God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every matter and for every work. And I said in my heart with regard to the children of man, that God is testing them, that they may see that they themselves are but beasts. He starts to realize, listen, there's righteousness and there's wicked in this earth, and I can't make sense of it. But there is a time that God has appointed when He will judge men's lives and the significance of them and the relative worth of them. That time is not always here and now, and it's not for me to know. God has appointed a time to judge. And that's why he goes on there in verse 19. For what happens to the children of man and what happens to the beast is the same. As one dies, so dies the other. They all have the same breath. The man has no advantage of the beast. All is vanity. Listen, if you consider this life alone, then we are just like animals. We die like animals. What our life is amounts to the same thing if you just consider this life alone, if you just consider the physical reality. All go to one place, verse 20. All are from dust, and to dust they return. But who considers this, verse 21? Who gives careful thought to this? And it's an unfortunate translation here, because he's not saying who knows whether this is true or not. He's saying, who considers this, that the spirit of man goes upward and the spirit of the beast goes down into the earth? He's not saying we don't know if this is true, because he's just made the affirmation. There's a time when God will judge. There's a time when God will evaluate our lives and then determine their relative value and worth and make everything right. So that's not his view at all. But he's saying, do we consider that time? Or do we act like we just beasts? Do we live like we just beasts? You see, there's a difference. The beasts go down, and yes, our bodies go down like a beast, but our spirit goes up to the Lord, and we are judged by him. We have to consider that as we live. And so people don't assign significance to life. God does. And he does that at his appointed time in the light of eternity. We don't assign significance. Other people don't assign significance. God does. Because he is the one who knows what he made us for. Look at chapter 4, verse 13. Better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who no longer knew how to take advice. For he went from prison to the throne, and though in his own kingdom he had been born poor, I saw all the living who move under the sun, along with that youth who was to stand in the king's place. There was no end of all the people, all of whom he led. So he's painting this picture of someone who rose to fame and fortune and authority from a nobody and nothing to be the ruler of a great kingdom. But then he must acknowledge this. There was no end of all the people of whom he led, yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. He's forgotten. Nobody sees the significance of his life. Just how amazing it was that he rose from this to that, and he influenced so many people. Nobody rejoices in that 10, 50, 100, 500 years from then, right? People are not the ones who assign meaning and significance to life. How often have you not seen this? We make such a big deal when a World Cup comes around. And who's the leading goal scorer, and who's the striker, and who's the most amazing defender. And then you see these players reach the pinnacle of their career, and they're hoisting the trophy, and they've attained it. And the world is trying to say, these people are amazing. They'll go down in the Hall of Fame. And no one remembers any player from the last World Cup. We just don't. And even if we do, what does that mean? How does that impact us? What difference does it make? Who was the top goal scorer at the last World Cup? Most of us can't even remember the last World Cup. Some of us didn't even bother watching it. Notice what he says there in chapter 7 and verse 15. In my vain life I've seen everything. There is a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man who prolongs his life in his evil doing. Be not overly righteous. Do not make yourself too wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Be not overly wicked, neither be a fool. Why should you die before your time? It is good that you should take hold of this, and from that withhold not your hand, for the one who fears God shall come out from both of them. And remember, as I explained here, he's talking about wisdom in your own eyes. And he's talking about folly when you pursue life according to your own rules and regulations and ethics. And he's saying the one who fears God escapes both. Because both don't lead to true life. They don't lead to the kind of life God wants us to live. We might evaluate ourselves in our own life and say, I'm living well. I'm living successfully. I'm living rightly. And that doesn't mean a thing. Because we are not the one who assign meaning and significance to life. God is the judge. not man. Look at verse 19. Wisdom gives strength to the wise. More than 10 rulers are in a city. There is value in wisdom. Surely there's not a righteous man on earth who does good and never sins. Hang on a minute. There is value in wisdom, but there's no one who possesses wisdom and righteousness in the absolute sense, in the complete and comprehensive sense. Verse 21, do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. We can't be too concerned what people say, what people's evaluation of our life is, because they are not the ultimate judge. These are all connecting into a perspective he's busy painting and drawing. Man's wisdom and knowledge and understanding is too limited. We can't see what ultimately makes our life significant, nor can other people. They are not the judge, God is. And so, chapter 8 and verse 10, by this point, you must acknowledge, I saw the wicked buried. The wicked, right? They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they'd done such things. That's vanity. Even the wicked are so sometimes misjudged that they are praised. That's how wrong man's judgment can be. Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Evil is not always judged rightly and brought to book, and justice is not upheld. But we are not the ultimate determiner. God is. And that's why he can say, though a sinner, verse 12, does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, it seems to be going well with him, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him, and he will not be well with the wicked. Neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God. God is the ultimate judge, and he will bring everything into justice in his time. I'm not the judge, other people aren't the judge. We live before God. And that's why in chapter 9 he'll go on to say, verse 1, all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, man does not know. Both are before him. Everything we are and do is evaluated and judged by God. He alone is the judge. And that takes place in the light of eternity. Are you living that way? Are you living with the realization that after this life, however short or however long, whatever it involves, good or bad, hardship or ease, there comes a day when your Creator will do an evaluation of your life and render a verdict. Did you use the gift that he gave you well? Or did you squander it? And what follows after that is the consequence. Not always before. Yes, there are sometimes consequences in this life, but as the book of Ecclesiastes has shown us, we don't always see that happening. But when God makes his evaluation, it is right. So we need to live in the light of that evaluation. When God says, this is what we must pursue, this is what we must do, that's what we must embrace. You think about it. The world is presenting us with a picture of what makes life meaningful, what is valuable, what is good. Marriage is outdated to the world. Child raising is overrated to the world. Arrogance is a virtue to the world. Wealth and achievements are highly prized to the world. Sin is delightful and beneficial in the world's judgment and estimation. But God says that's folly and shame. Live your life by that standard, by those judgments and evaluations, and you will not live well. Consider God is the one who evaluates and knows, and live in the light of what he has revealed. Thirdly, work and satisfaction. Work and satisfaction. Again, going back to chapter 1, he starts with this whole problem. Verse 8, All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. And he begins this book with this reality. People just never seem to be satisfied. Nothing in this world seems to satisfy. And in fact, in chapter 2, he does this experiment. He actually applies himself, verse 1. Come now, I'll test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. Behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it's mad. Of pleasure, what use is it? I search with my heart how to cheer my body with wine. My heart still guiding me with wisdom. And he goes through this whole experiment that he did, trying to find lasting satisfaction in possessions, in accomplishments, in experiences, in knowledge, in study, in work. And all of it he finds to be weariness. Notice chapter 2, verse 18. I hated all my toil, in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to one who came after me. There's just no satisfaction. And he concludes there in chapter 2 and verse 23. All of his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This is vanity. Even the man who works and toils but doesn't find rest. There's nothing better, verse 24, for a person than he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This I saw is from the hand of God. Apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases God, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he's given the busyness of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. So he acknowledges, that we can't find satisfaction without God. But then he looks and he says, when we take God into account, that doesn't mean satisfaction automatically flows. Satisfaction, fulfillment, joy in what God has given us to do is a gift from him. Look at chapter 4 and verse 4. I saw all the toil and all the skill in work comes from a man's envy of his neighbor. This is vanity. There's a kind of working and toil that is driven by envy, not by living for God. And this is vanity. It doesn't satisfy. Chapter 5 and verse 9. There is gain in a land in every way. A king committed to cultivated fields. It's gain for a land when it has a ruler that encourages toil and work and productivity. But notice here, he who loves money, verse 10, will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This is vanity. There's a kind of toil and work that is just coming from greed, and that doesn't satisfy. The desire for more, the love of money, the love of prestige, this doesn't satisfy. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of the laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. There's a kind of toil that's just driven by greed, by desire for more, and it doesn't satisfy. Better is the one who has little, but has satisfaction with the little that they have. Notice chapter 5, verse 18. Behold, what I've seen to be good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of his life that God has given him. This is his lot. To find satisfaction in whatever God has given us to do. That gives life meaning and significance. To receive whatever God has given us as a gift from him. It comes from God. Look at there at verse 19. Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and the power to enjoy them and to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil, this is a gift from God. Satisfaction is a gift from God. To find satisfaction in whatever God gives. But the perspective here is that we see life as a gift from him. Therefore we accept whatever he gives with joy, with gratitude. It comes from the hand of God. Look at chapter 6 and verse 1. There's an evil that I've seen under the sun. It lies heavy on mankind, a man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires, yet God does not give him the power to enjoy them. And we looked at the whole of chapter 6 to To have all these things and possessions and experiences, but not enjoy them is folly. It makes life meaningless. It's worse than living, in fact. That's what he says. But then in chapter 7, he talks about things that are better than just having things and pleasures and enjoyments and money and wealth. Chapter 7, verse 1, a good name is better than precious ointment. Verse 2, it's better to go to the house of mourning. Verse 3, sorrow is better than laughter. Better is the rebuke, verse 5, of the wise. There's things that are better, and that's what we are to seek, the better things. And in the bigger scheme of things, sometimes we are going through times of difficulty and want and need because God is accomplishing better things, things that ultimately make our lives meaningful and significant. And so wisdom is found in accepting that God has an appointed time and place for everything, and He is sometimes accomplishing better things. You'll notice in this section how often in chapter 7 it speaks about the heart of man, the name of man, the reputation of man. Verse 3, verse 4, verse 7, verse 9. God is trying to form and fashion character. And that is better because character gives lasting joy, lasting peace, lasting significance. And God is sometimes aiming at that. And therefore, at the end of this section, he concludes in chapter 7, in verse 14, in the day of prosperity, be joyful. In the day of adversity, consider God has made the one as well as the other, so that man cannot find out anything that will be after him. Listen, life's going to consist of prosperity and adversity, good times and bad times. Joy is not found in living for the good times. Joy is found in embracing everything from the hand of God and seeing and thanking God for the prosperity and the joy of that, and thanking God for the better things that He's accomplishing in the adversity. So we accept good and bad from the hand of God. Chapter 7, verse 25. I turn my heart to know and to search out and to seek wisdom and the scheme of things, to know wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. And I find something more bitter than death. The woman whose heart is snares and nets and whose hands are fetters. He who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. There are things better that God is accomplishing even through adversity. And there's things worse even than prosperity and ease. And that is sin. Being taken captive by Dame Folly. Being led astray into this life of sin and destruction and being entrapped by it is worse than hardship and difficulty. So, to find joy, we need to pursue what God says is valuable. Pursue character. Pursue the better things. Enjoy the good things. And avoid the sinful things. Sin is the one thing that will always rob you of joy. It will ensnare your life and waste it. It's described as emptiness, vanity, to follow the way of sin. So what he's commending here is seek and follow and delight in God. Then we're living well. Notice chapter 8 and verse 14. There is vanity that takes place on the earth, but there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked, and there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. Well, yes, it's true. This is a mystery. This is something you can't fully understand, that sometimes the righteous people get seemingly the punishment of the wicked, and the wicked seemingly get the blessings of the righteous. But notice what he commends, verse 15. In the light of all of this, I commend joy. For man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. We can know we are living well if we are experiencing God's fullness, God's peace, God's comfort, God's power, God's perseverance in the midst of good or bad, ease or want. Whatever the circumstances, then we know we're living well. That's what he's commending here. delight, satisfaction. And you think about this. The world is putting forward to us so many ways to live that they say this is the way to live, this is the way to find significance. But what is the world full of when you really bring it down to the level of the individual person, how they feel in the depths of their heart? Anxiety, fear, guilt, shame, regret, hopelessness. So much so that they need to drown all of that out with alcohol abuse and drug abuse and prescription medications abuse. They can't face that reality of the emptiness at the heart level, the lack of satisfaction, the lack of peace, the lack of joy, the lack of contentment, because those come as a gift from God. You sitting here today, many people believe Ecclesiastes is the gospel of the Old Testament. It's Solomon's attempt to appeal not only to the unbelieving Israelites, but to the unbelieving nations, and saying, this is what life consists in. This is the abundant life. It's found only in God. It's found only in walking in the fear of God. Jesus came as the fulfillment of this, the greater Solomon, the greater inspired preacher who said, come to me, all you are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He came as the Word of God, living and active. He said, I came that you might have life and have it abundantly. He came to break the power of sin that ruins our life and takes us captive. He came to take away guilt and shame and all those realities because we don't live life well. If you're sitting here today and you don't know Jesus Christ, you're not living well, because the fear of God is found in Him. To live rightly before God comes through faith in Him and Him alone. And if you've not been living well, the good news is God sent His Son to live the perfect life, to live well because He knew we never would, to live perfectly because He knew we never would. And He offers us the life of Jesus Christ for our life. That's grace. God not only gives us life and gives us joy, He gives it to us in Jesus Christ freely, unearned and unmerited. That offer is yours. Think about these things. To live life well, we need to live by faith in God and in Jesus Christ. To live well, we need to live knowing that God is the ultimate judge. And the ultimate judge will find us guilty and our life fruitless and worthless unless we give it to Jesus Christ and He make it new. To live life well, we need to find joy in everything. In everything that God has attained. Because He who did not spare His own Son will graciously, along with Him, give us all good things. Romans 8. Think about these things. Let's pray. Father, forgive us for not living well. Even as I think about my own life, there are so many days, hours, weeks, months, and even years that are wasted. So many opportunities that are wasted. Even since we've been studying Ecclesiastes, Lord, so much truth that I've ignored. Me and many who are sitting here. And so we thank You for Jesus Christ. We acknowledge, Lord Jesus, that You always fully did what was pleasing to the Father. You lived the perfect life, and You died a death in our place so that we could have life in Your name. We run to You, and we ask You to give us what we haven't earned and don't deserve. Life eternal, life in abundance, life full and free. We ask that You transform our faith and make it live, that we'd live wholly in You and for You and walk with You all the days of our life, all the way into an eternal life with You. In Christ's name and for His glory we pray. Amen. Thank you for joining us. Please stay for some fellowship and the ministry market and enjoy your afternoon with us.